There's a specific experience that comes from doing what you were told was the right thing to do, and then noticing that it never quite settled with who you are. You're functioning, you're capable, you're moving, but the ease everyone else seems to find never arrived in a way that was promised for you. This isn't here to push you forward. This show is here to help you stop overriding what you already know. Because if you found your way here, you didn't avoid effort, you didn't sit back and wait, you didn't refuse guidance. You tried to refine yourself the way refinement was presented to you. And let's face it, you took the courses, you invested the money, you followed the get fix quick paths, not because you were broken, but because you were told something needed adjusting. And quietly underneath all of that, there was an assumption you learned to live with, that if you just stayed positive enough, consistent enough, open enough, the thing would eventually click. So when it didn't, you didn't stop. You recalibrated your mindset. You told yourself doubt was just fear. You told yourself resistance meant growth. You told yourself questioning was something to rise above it. Because capable people are taught that if something isn't working, the solution is optimism. So you stayed optimistic. You stayed agreeable. You stayed open. And you learned how to override the pause. But overriding your intuition with positive affirmations doesn't make something work. It delays the clarity that would have told you the truth sooner. What if nothing was wrong with you? What if the problem was never that you needed fixing, but that your attention was never anchored in something that was actually yours on your path in your timeline? So you tried to build with other people's parts, other people's strategies, other people's language, other people's timelines, other people's standards, and you hoped the machine would work for you. You optimized the visible things, your content, your delivery, your aesthetics, your presence, your lifestyle. You balanced harder. You networked more strategically. You went to the events. You listened to the voices that sounded confident. You told yourself this was refinement. And all the while, there was a quieter signal you kept setting aside. Just slowly. Not because you were reckless, but because you were being responsible. Because responsibility, as it's taught, often means prioritizing optimism over orientation, over positioning, over strategy. Positive intention cannot replace structure. When you don't have a system of your own to operate from, you end up borrowing certainty and calling it alignment. And over time, that creates a very particular kind of exhaustion. And it's not really burnout, even though you do experience those things. It's disorientation. You're working, you're trying, you're doing all of the right things, but you're not building from yourself. This is where we pause. If you're sitting at the refining table with this episode, ask yourself one thing honestly. Where have I been using effort to compensate for missing structure? No answer required. Just notice what comes up. This is a kind of question you don't really rush. You want to sit with it, journal with it for a few days, for a few weeks, and see what surfaces to the top. Because for so long, you have quieted this voice, quieted this intuition, quieted this GPS system that knows exactly where you want to be. And you prioritized the external strategy, the external things. But this time, I want you to sit down and ask yourself, where have I been using effort to compensate for missing structure? This isn't about mindset, and it isn't about doing more. It's about noticing what you've been overriding this whole time, what you've been silencing this whole time. Because refinement doesn't begin with fixing anything. Absolutely not. It begins when you stop silencing the signals that were trying to guide you in the first place and build from something that you can actually hold on to, that can actually hold you. And instead of asking yourself to hold everything together, nothing here needs to be rushed. We'll keep naming, we'll keep resurfacing things that actually holds who you are, and we'll get to know who you are during the rest of these episodes that are going to come. Because there's a very specific experience that comes from doing what you were told was the right thing to do and noticing that it just never settled. Because if you found your way here, you didn't avoid effort. You didn't sit back and wait. You didn't refuse guidance. You tried to refine yourself the way refinement was presented to you. Now, here's what I observe again and again. Most people weren't failing because they lacked effort. They were failing because they were taught stories instead of structures. We glorify chaos as courage, speed as intelligence, and confusion as part of the process. But chaos is not a system, and pressure is not a strategy. If you were never taught how to sequence decisions, how to manage your capacity, or how to think in long term instead of short wins, then the exhaustion makes sense. So nothing's really wrong with you. There's a myth I want you to quietly put down, that systems limit your creativity, that structure makes you very rigid and boring and played out, that freedom comes from breaking out of something. Because in reality, systems create freedom. They reduce decision fatigue, they hold your standards when you're tired, they let you move without renegotiating your values every week. A system isn't something you obey, it's something that carries you when your willpower runs out. Most people didn't avoid systems because they didn't want them. They actually avoided them because no one ever showed them what a good one looks like. So you didn't fail, you weren't behind, and you were navigating complexity without support. And refinement begins when you stop asking yourself to push harder and start building something that can actually hold and guide you. Don't worry, we'll take this slowly.